cases, they may have been hypnotically affected to not remember. Dark mission, Hoagland says, and the evidence is pretty clear, that they hypnotically debriefed, is what they call it. But supposedly they were hypnotized to help them enhance their memory and to recall, and apparently some of them had been hypnotically advised not to remember certain things. As much as I admire Ed Mitchell and respect him, tremendous, wonderful guy, he has admitted publicly in front of other people that his time on the moon, walking on the moon, was kind of vague. He can't recall everything. And of course, that's sad. I don't think they ever got to Neil Armstrong. Because when he got back, he left the program, said, "To hell with it, I'm out of here." He went back to Cincinnati and started teaching math at the university there. And Armstrong hasn't said 5 words publicly since.
Uh-huh.
And then you have a case of Aldrin. Now, Aldrin has had experiences where he has been with friends, and the subject would come up, and Buzz would start to cry, or he would get nauseated. One time, and Hoagland touches upon this, I think, chapter 10 in the book, where Aldrin was in conversation with a few people and with his wife, having a few drinks, and was just kind of relaxed. And somebody asked him a blunt, straight to the point question. And he had to run out and throw up. He got sick. Now this to me is a result, and I've studied it enough over the years to know that that sounds to me like hypnotic suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
He has been hypnotically conditioned not to remember or to not even discuss it. And if he gets nauseated, and in the one instance with a bunch of old friends, old flyboy types, he ended up starting to cry. Now this breaks my heart, because Aldrin is a good man. He was one of our better men to be selected for that program.
Mm-hmm.
You know the story, and this is common knowledge. They got back from Apollo 11. They put Aldrin in a sanitarium for about 6 weeks. He was suffering from alcoholism. Do you believe that? Do you believe one of our best and bravest, one of the finest, who in the Apollo program suffered from alcoholism? Nonsense. That apparently it was the programming to be reinforced. Now, why would a grown man with his background break down and cry like a baby, or end up getting nauseous and barf on the subject? That's hypnotic, post-hypnotic stress.
So what is it on the moon that is, that is so important that they want to completely whitewash it out?
Oh my God, the astronomical societies, the professional astronomers in this country have been guilty of criminal activity. You may quote me. They've been guilty of criminal activity for years to not discuss the reality of what they knew on the moon. There are major facilities and major activities going on the moon all the time. Not only that, the moon has water. Now, whether it's a natural process from the satellite, or whether it's water that's been stored there for use, there are vaporous signs of a form of an atmosphere in the bottom of some of the craters. Now, astronomers have seen these pictures, but that dishonest bunch of nitwits won't discuss it. They're scared because you know why? 90% of their income comes from government grants. And when you've got a government grant, and that's your prime source of income, you're going to say whatever the government says you should say, or don't say whatever the government doesn't want said. Well, anyhow, there's some atmosphere on the moon, at least in the base of several of the larger craters. There is water on the moon, but there is major activity going on. I mean, we're talking about engineering activity. There are giant ships that come and go out of the craters. Mm-hmm. There are lights all the time. They have noticed bridges appearing and then disappearing. I mean, they're active as hell on the moon. But the same activity is going on Mars. Sure. You've seen my photograph, I guess. It's not only my photograph. But there is a city the size of Chicago underground on Mars that's generating so much heat it shows up in infrared photographs.
Are you in touch with John Lear?
I've met John. I've been in his house a time or two. I visited him. I have a tremendous respect for him. The reason I like John is he's been nailed, as I have, as a damn fool maverick, you know?
I mean, this is his pet, project.
The establishment has tried to ridicule John Lear, and you can't ridicule John Lear because he's got sources similar to some of my own that are beyond question. He's getting people inside, feeding him information almost on a regular basis. I get mine in bits and pieces when I go to conferences and when I meet people, but John gets it direct.
Okay, I have a question for you about Arlington Institute and what's might be happening in October, because we have a lot of information coming at us about October and about something that may be planned. I don't know if you've heard some of this stuff. We have our top secret witnesses are coming at us saying, that the economy is being engineered to crash here in the U.S.
Oh, this whole thing has been engineered.
All right.
It's been diddled. This is a joke. And the poor guy out there, the poor working man on the street, as it were, is being screwed royally. But, this whole thing, Carrie, I would almost come to a point that 90% of what you call reality are threats with the Russians, the Georgia invasion, the stock market collapse. All of this is all engineered.
So tell us about it. So tell us about Georgia, because, to get back to, I know the guy who's head of, or was head of, the Arlington Institute. They are sending out a newsletter inviting people to tell them what dreams and visions they're having about October, because October has become such a hot month in tracking. There's something called Half Past Human. Have you heard of them?
In passing, just
they're doing, they do language. They track with web bots all over the internet, basically tracking where a language is going. They've been doing it since '98 with computers and so on, and they were able to chart, like before 9/11, this huge raise in consciousness, that some event was imminent. What they're getting for October is the same thing, only something even more long range in its effect.
Well, I have a tremendous respect for John Peterson. He's brilliant.
All right.
I've known him
so
for some years.
Arlington Institute is suddenly asking for people's dreams and visions about October, why are they doing it?
Marcia is more in touch with John now than I am. He's a computer person,
I understand.
I won't touch the damn thing because, as I told you earlier, I enjoy my privacy. And if you're on the World Wide Web, you don't have any privacy.
Okay,
so anyhow,
I agree with you there. So, okay, but you know him, and here I'm just basically, you're saying this thing is engineered. So what happened in Georgia? What do you know about it?
Oh, it was all engineered.
Okay, so the Russians, were tipped off?
The president of Georgia did what he did just to lure the Russians in.
Right.
And he went in. The Russians could not have ignored him, for God's sake. He invaded one of their little, well...
So what's the purpose behind it, though? We know what happened, but why?
I think, what could the purpose be other than to detract people's attention from this over here to this over here?
Okay, and
while
this over here
while our
is...
economy was falling around your knees, we're all paying attention to the Russians invading poor little Georgia. Okay. Well, the Russians didn't invade poor little Georgia. They went out and whacked the president of Georgia's little pee-pee, as it were, stopped that, and they pulled back, you know.
Right.
That was, you know how the magician works? He gets you in front of his, you know, he's
Very
got,
good,
and
yes.
he's doing this with this hand while he's picking your pocket with this one.
That's right.
And that's what the government is doing. And when I say government, it's not the government you think you got. Mm-hmm. It's not the, you know, God, that's all a facade in itself. Mm-hmm. The government we've got is probably being totally run by the Anunnaki, because there is a power beyond power that's pulling the strings.
Right.
They call them the Illuminati, but there are guys above the Illuminati that are really in power.
Okay, but we're told the Vatican is behind a lot of it, and that, in other words, the Vatican is behind what's going on in the U.S., that there's a plan, and you've got the Anunnaki. This is not a positive plan, okay, to take down the U.S.
Well, they think it is.
Do you think it is?
Their ultimate idea is, yes, a positive idea.
Okay, what is it?
A one-world government.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
Of course that's what they want.
Right.
And they're going to have it eventually.
Absolutely. Now, you can have a positive one,
but the growing
pains, right?
The growing pains that we go through before we get there, it's going to be pretty horrendous. Not only are we going to have to put up with this crap with Nibiru, mm-hmm. which is a real thing, but this growing process that we're going through to end up eventually with a one-world government is going to be painful as hell. And there's going to be a lot of blood on the streets before it's over with. Mm-hmm. Sadly enough, that's in my opinion a fact. And that's being manipulated from a very high level.
Okay, but we have white hats in the U.S. government that are actually trying to prevent this, are they not?
We have some good men and good women who are well aware of what's taking place and what's transpiring, and they're trying to modify, ameliorate, is that the right word? To make this growth pain as painless as possible. They're trying to not have as much blood as it might take. Growth from adolescence as a species and as a society is somewhat like the painful growth of an adolescent kid, 13 years old, who's trying to grow up. Do you remember when you went through that? It was
Sure.
not fun time.
Absolutely. So, okay, but let's get down to the nuts and bolts. The stock market is crashing.
Mm-hmm.
You need to invest in gold and silver
The
if you want to
stock
stay
market
alive.
was rotten to its core.
Absolutely. But are you telling people to leave, to go to South America? What's your advice?
I'm telling people that you're in for some difficult times. And I say this in my presentations. I jokingly look at them and say, you're all doomed. There's not a one of you that's going to be around 100 years from now. You're doomed. So to hell with it. Enjoy the ride. No, I tell people who are interested in listening, for whatever it is I have to say, that you're in for some difficult times. It's going to happen. There is no way to avoid it. We cannot go on as we were, because some of our systems were rotten to the core, and our banking system, the insurance programs, all of that, stock market, Wall Street, those guys were absolutely rotten.
The housing industry?
The housing industry. That was bound to fail. You talk about a bubble, it was bound to fail. It had to fail. Well, I'm glad it failed. Hope to hell that they learned something from it. Now,
Okay, but are we talking about martial law in the United States? I mean, what are we talking here?
You're talking about a time when you may have martial law. It's only one step away. You know that the authority has been given to the president to declare it.
Right.
Congress gave that authority to the president years ago. I've even lost track of how long it's been. But anyhow, all the president has to do, whoever he may be, and that doesn't matter much anymore either, because one nitwit is very much like the other. You have a national emergency, and it's declared.
Right.
Boom. Martial law. You declare a national emergency, which has not been declared yet,
Right.
but we're right on the edge of it,
Right.
and you're going to have martial law.
Okay,
and
but we
you're
don't have an election, right?
Well, you're thinking about an October surprise.
I have no idea. I'm asking you.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm not sure it'll happen in October. I suspect it may occur within the next year. But I don't know. I haven't had any dreams. My dreams have been pretty fascinating recently, but none of them have been terribly troubling. And I know this is all happening. It's going to take place. It's inevitable. It's been orchestrated. The Illuminati do exist. They are in power. They've been in power for years. They've been demonstrating that power ever since 1913, when they created the hell is it, this banking system? The
Federal Reserve.
Federal Reserve, yeah, which is a private corporation. We lost most of it in 47. I don't know whether you were aware of that, but that was a big year. National security became everything. It became the member of the triad. 47, we declared, we made the National Security Agency. We formed a pact with the Brits, the Australians, the Canadians, and New Zealanders. The UKUSA Pact, which most people don't even know exists. The UKUSA crowd, all of us, Britain, US, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, are all like this. Whoever's in the White House and who's ever at Buckingham Palace, it don't matter.
All right.
The power behind the scenes has been running this damn thing since 1947. And Ike saw it, scared the hell out of him. He met the Anunnaki, that scared the hell out of him. So they're pulling our strings now like they always have.
Okay. So what's your solution? What would you tell people? I mean, in facing the future, in trying to reinvent the future, certainly Marsha's working with people to become enlightened, to
She's doing
apply.
a tremendous amount of work to help people make this transition. Carrie, we're not just going through a transition, we're going through a transcendent transformation, literally. A transcendent transformation. We're going to come out of this thing when it's all over with, totally different species. We're not going to be the same people we were in the past. And that's good. And it's going to hurt, and it's going to be painful. And I tell people, and I've said this repeatedly, don't get too uptight about it. You've been through hell before, you're going to through a bit of it again. But once it's over, once you've made that transition, we're going to have, hopefully, a new world, a new future, a new beginning. And I think that's the end of the great year that we're going through. We're going through the end of a 26,000-year cycle. And I tell you, 2012 don't matter. First of all, Christ was born 7 years before. And this is a fact. And if you don't believe me, get Sir Lawrence Gardner, who's probably one of the best historians we've got working today. Lawrence Gardner's got the facts. Jesus was born in 7 BC on the 1st of March. Now, if you want to count from his birth, like we supposedly have been doing, add 7 years to 2008. You end up with 2015. That's pretty close to what
So you're saying we're actually in the year 2015 now?
No, we're in the year 2015 right now.
Right. So
Yes.
that means that Nibiru, when you say it's coming in 2020, is actually due in about 5 years.
Probably.
So we're looking at 2013 by our calendar.
Well, no later than 2017. I'll throw 2017 out,
Okay.
and you can take that to the bank. 2017. Now
Okay.
that'll give or take a year or two, because the celestial mechanics, they haven't really worked it all out yet. We've got computers you wouldn't believe, but they're still trying to feed in some of the data.
So is one of the remote viewers, you're in touch with Ingo Swann?
I haven't been in touch with Ingo for some time, but Carrie, I've been doing some remote viewing.
Right.
I've even had a couple of out-of-body experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing a lot of meditating. When you step into that world, there is no time. Mm-hmm. And you can talk to anybody, everywhere, all at once. Mm-hmm. And now, that sounds silly to anyone who doesn't understand what I'm trying to say. When you step into that realm of timelessness, and you remote view, and you step out of your body, and you go into altered states, and you meditate, you're in a timeless, infinite reality that people communicate. You'd be shocked and amazed at the wealth of information that's out there just to tap into. The old ones used to talk about the Akashic record. Mm-hmm. It's real. It's real. And it isn't just about the past, because, Carrie, there is no past. Nor is there a future. There's only an eternal now. And a physicist sitting here in this room would say balderdash, because they wouldn't grasp for a minute what I'm trying to talk about. But old Ingo would.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been some of those places myself that you're talking about.
I knew it, you see.
And so I have to say you're absolutely right. And it's incredible pleasure for us to hear this from yourself. And I would like to, at this time, just open the floor and say, is there anything that we haven't covered here that you would like to talk about? And then, of course, we would also like to invite Bill to ask you some questions.
We've danced around on a whole bunch of things for the last hour. I enjoy it. I enjoy chatting with you two guys. You're pleasant people. As I say, I'm an old codger, and you plug me in and turn me loose. There's no telling where I may end up. I've been around, as I say, 79 years this trip. I've made a dozen or two previous trips, which amazingly I remember quite a bit about. When you start going into that timeless realm, you step into that infinite, which we're all part of. Memories of other lives come flooding into you sometimes. Mm-hmm. Oh God, the things I've seen, the things I've done, the places I've been, this life are kind of shocking. The things I've done, the places I've been, and the lives I've lived before are beyond belief. I'm not boasting. This is not a boast. Mm-hmm. But I'm an old soul. I've been around on this planet a long time. And I amazingly remember it. Some of the memories I would rather not remember, because they're painful. Mm-hmm. Hell, I have memories of Sumer. I knew the Anunnaki back then. Worked with them. I was one of their products. I know them now. And I don't have any fear. In bringing this to a close, I would like to say to whoever is watching, get rid of the fear. You have nothing to fear. You are an immortal, timeless being who has an infinite future in a glorious universe that's so filled with beauty and life that we on this little tiny planet couldn't begin to grasp. But I say to people, don't be afraid, for God's sake. Gather around you those you love. Spread that love around. And go into tomorrow with courage. Because you've been through a hell of a lot worse before. So be hopeful, love one another, and have courage. And that's really all I have to say.
Well, thank you, Bob Dean. It's really an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you, Carrie Cassidy. I enjoyed every minute of it. I'm 79 years old. What do you mean, hold that thought?
That is so important that they want to completely whitewash it out.
Oh my God, these astronomical societies, the professional astronomers in this country have been guilty of criminal activity. You may quote me. They've been guilty of criminal activity for years to not discuss the reality of what they knew on the moon. There are major facilities and major activities going on the moon all the time. Not only that, the moon has water. Now, whether it's a natural process from the satellite, or whether it's water that's been stored there for use, there are vaporous signs of a form of an atmosphere in the bottom of some of the craters. Now, astronomers have seen it was kind of vague. He can't recall everything, and of course, that's sad. I don't think they ever got to Neil Armstrong. Because when he got back, he left the program, said, "To hell with it, I'm out of here." He went back to Cincinnati and started teaching math at the university there. And Armstrong hasn't said 5 words publicly since.
Uh-huh.
And then you have a case of Aldrin. Now, Aldrin has had experiences where he has been with friends, and the subject would come up, and Buzz would start to cry. Cases, they may have been hypnotically affected to not remember. Dark mission, Hoagland says, and the evidence is pretty clear, that they hypnotically debriefed, is what they call it. But supposedly they were hypnotized to help them enhance their memory and to recall, and apparently some of them had been hypnotically advised not to remember certain things. As much as I admire Ed Mitchell and respect him, tremendous, wonderful guy, he has admitted publicly in front of other people that his time on the moon, walking on the moon, or he would get nauseated. One time, and Hoagland touches upon this, I think, chapter 10 in the book, where Aldrin was in conversation with a few people and with his wife, having a few drinks, and he's just kind of relaxed. And somebody asked him a blunt, straight to the point question. and he had to run out and throw up. He got sick. Now this to me is a result, and I've studied it enough over the years to know that that sounds to me like hypnotic suggestion. Mm-hmm. He has been hypnotically conditioned not to remember or to not even discuss it. And if he gets nauseated, and in the one instance with a bunch of old friends, old flyboy types, he ended up starting to cry. Now this breaks my heart because Aldrin is a good man. He was one of our better men to be selected for that program. Mm-hmm. You know the story, and this is common knowledge. They got back from Apollo 11. They put Aldrin in a sanitarium for about 6 weeks. He was suffering from alcoholism. Do you believe that? Do you believe one of our best and bravest, one of the finest, who in the Apollo program suffered from alcoholism? Nonsense. You know, that apparently it was the programming to be reinforced. Now, why would a grown man with his background break down and cry like a baby, or end up getting nauseous and barf on the subject? That's hypnotic, post-hypnotic stress.
So what is it on the moon that is